Hello and welcome to Kernel Convos with Manini. It's October 2020 and it is World Mental Health Awareness Month. And what I decided to do was to bring along a very close friend of mine who will share her journey with you, and she will let you in on how it's been for her as a mental health advocate and as a person who's lived with, or who's living rather presently with a mental health illness. And I saw it fit to share it with you guys, being a person who's been through depression, who's cut her wrist, who's been suicidal before. I just thought to myself, there are so many people that are not talking about their issues. There are so many people that are hurt, that are going through things, and this is a perfect month. So I hope you will learn from it, and I hope that you are able to relate and connect with her. Enjoy.
I am Babalwa, Nkente, and I am a mental health blogger, advocate, and activist in the space. I also founded an initiative that I started online, which is called Mental Talk 101. I happen to be living with Bipolar Type 2. My mental health journey, I think when I was aware that I have mental illness was in 2012. Actually, it was in 2012. This was the passing of my father, and I feel like for me that the passing of my father was actually like the biggest trigger, because I feel like I've always had it, but I never really understood it. And yeah, so for me, that's when my father passed. I remember because my mom was from the hospital, and then she came home, and then I remember there were just these two police guys who were knocking at our gate. And I knew that something is up, and I could hear from my mom crying from the gate, and I was like, okay, I know what's already happened. And for me at that time, when I heard that my father passed, by default, I wanted to be my mother's rock. So I heard my mother scream. I did not give myself the luxury to cry. So I held it in. I was like, it's time to be a big girl and take care of your mother. And yeah. And I remember my family coming in from Joburg, from Cape Town, and I was just making sure everything is going right, and I was just busy. I was trying to keep so much busy that I would not have time or give myself time to grieve. And it's so crazy because I didn't think anyone was noticing. And then my grandmother, at the day of the funeral, because I was still trying to keep busy, right? And my grandmother, while we were at the gravesite, I told myself that, okay, when people are leaving, I'm also going to stand up and I'm just going to go. And then my grandmother held me down, and she literally was like, just when I was standing up, she was like, sit down. She was like, Wena, you need to cry. And I was like, Ma, no, I'm fine. She was like, you're not fine. I've been looking at you the whole week, acting busy, going to this, pillar to post. You're going to sit here and you're going to cry, and we're not going to leave. And my grandmother sat me down. She forced me, because I was like, I'm not going to go through that whole process of taking flowers and throwing them, saying your final goodbye. I was like, I'm not going to do that. And my grandmother, she literally dragged me. And that's when I was feeling it. I was like, okay, I can't hold it anymore. And I cried. Imagine a person who is postponing their pain. That is not healthy. So by the time I was breaking down, and I was not having it. And I also feel like at that present moment, yes, my grandmother gave me the platform to be vulnerable and cry. But for me, it was still not enough, because I felt like, okay, people are going to leave. People are going to go back to Joburg. People are going to go back to Cape Town. And it's just going to be me and my mom. And I don't know how to do this, And I remember just feeling like, okay, I still need to show up for my mom, but not for myself. At that time, I was just so focused of being service to my mom. I disregarded my own pain, because I felt like, no, my mom just lost her life partner. So the pain that I'm feeling must be, smaller than hers. So I was just so focused on her. And then I tried to hold it in. But, like I said, that's not normal. I reached my breaking point when it came to me leaving my mom and having to come to Joburg and start school and, and start my career. And it was not easy because I was here. Yes, I was with family, but I still felt like I still needed to be back there. And I still did not give myself permission. I was still disregarding myself. I was going in about life and still feeling like there's something that is not resolved, still something that is empty. And it was when I was in class and we were having this discussion. People were talking about their dads, people talking about their moms, and people were just conversing. And I was like, I feel uncomfortable. And I started to twitch. I was like, I don't want to have this conversation. So anything at that point was triggering me. I was like, I don't want to have to cry. And I remember that whenever I wanted or felt like crying, I'll just stand up and I'll just go to the bathroom and cry and then come back. And I think I did that for a full year. And that became worse up until I was starting to have suicidal thoughts. And I would look at a knife, I would look at the pills in the house and start thinking and planning of how maybe I could use them when no one is in the house. And I was just thinking of 1,000 ways to do it. And there's this one day, I remember because it was a Sabbath. It was in the evening. I didn't go to church that day. And I decided to take a knife and I started to just cut, like I have a little incision on my tummy. And I started to cut myself because I wanted to see blood. And I remember because in the same energy, I started to panic because I was seeing so much blood. And I was like, I'm going to call my friend who's going to come pick me and take me to the hospital. And that was my first suicide attempt. It was scary because I was like, I knew what I was doing. I was very much conscious, but I was also blinded because I felt a pain and I felt so much pain, but I needed to let it out. And I felt like it was inside me. It's been a year and I'm still feeling like this. So yeah, that for me was the first time having my suicide attempt, and then I got committed because I was a danger to myself. And they started me on therapy and on medication. And I feel like that's where my love-hate relationship with medication started as well, because when I was heavily medicated, I didn't feel like myself. Because remember, the medication is supposed to suppress your chemicals because you have a chemical imbalance. Once you are in a depressive episode, you have a chemical imbalance. So they're trying to balance your hormones so that you are operating in a, what they call normal states. So for me, I felt like I was inhuman in the medication. I felt like I was sitting there. I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of where I am, but I cannot be Babalwa that I know myself to be. And, for some time they tried, yes, to try to change my medication around, but it was not working. And then my healing journey started from there. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go without the medication. I'm going to try tools that don't involve medication per se.
And when you talk about bipolar type 2, what is that? And with that also, what are the stereotypes that you'd like to break within the mental health space?
Okay, so bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, okay? So I'm going to try to explain it into simple terms without, overpowering myself with words. So moods, I can be sad, I can be happy, and sometimes that happens in weird intervals. So 5 minutes ago, we were sharing a joke, and maybe 2 minutes later, I've just shifted into a whole different mood altogether. And sometimes it's not easy to explain, and sometimes there's no real reason behind it. So, but it's in categories. So there's bipolar type 1, which is much more severe. And then there's bipolar type 2. I'm going to come to explain bipolar type 2 because I know more about it. I'm not a mental health professional in that sense where I can explain the terms. But in terms of type 2 of bipolar, there's a manic and a depressive episode. So I'm going to explain manic behavior. Manic behavior is when it's not easy to quite really like pick up if someone is having an episode. So it looks like just behavior that's normal in the eye. Like I go to work, I meet up with my friends, I do all my daily activities that mean something to me. But when it comes to me being alone, that is when all the walls crash down. So it's something that I know myself, but any other person will be easy to pick up. So it also looks like reckless behavior. So I could be shopping a lot, buying things that I don't need. It's reckless behavior. Sometimes it shows itself in promiscuous sex, promiscuous drinking. You're just drinking too much. You're just having this life party. You just want to be around a high. So I'll just associate with that. It's like you're associated with a high when you're in a manic. You're just rushing. You just want this high of being elevated. And then it's quite easy when you're from a manic, because immediately you hit a manic, you go to a depressive. A depressive, that is where now you are more starting to have suicidal thoughts. You are starting to think of 1,000 ways to kill yourself. You look at a knife and you start thinking, I'll probably kill myself like this. So at that point, that is where you will need obviously to be committed and probably start medication and taking treatment and therapy. So yeah, so in terms of stereotypes, I have a love-hate relationship with media, because when you're looking at the content of the production companies, when they come to portraying how mental illnesses look like in other TV shows or anything, that's where you start to see like bipolar is associated with being crazy. Like you start hearing ubani, oh, she's so bipolar because she just switches like this and switches like this. It's also associated in a very bad way to being a psychopath. That's what I hate, because it's like, you are acting some type of way, or you are a danger to someone. I even relate in a sense that when I'd moved in with someone and I was carrying a knife, right? And I was just chopping something, and I was sharing with them that, hey, listen, because we are females, I just need to, and we're just explaining boundaries in terms of like how we're gonna live together and all of that. And I just happened to explain that, listen, I happen to be living with a mental illness, so you need to sometimes understand that when I'm like this, I am just going through my things. I might not be okay at the time to talk to you, but I just need you to understand. And at the time, because I was cooking and talking at the same time, so I'm carrying a knife, and while I'm sharing that, I'm like, and she's like, whoa, am I safe with you holding the knife like that? And it really, really hurt my feelings. It really did, because I'm coming out and I'm being vulnerable at that moment. And I'm like, this is who I am, and this is, what you can expect from me. And you're gonna use my mental health in such an ugly way. So that has been the journey. And I meet so many people who either live with depression or anxiety, or sometimes even bipolar, who are like, yeah, we've been at it, especially if you share it in a workspace. You see, that is even more trickier, because you have other people now who know your condition and who's gonna start to micromanage and just peep into your behavior. Oh, when she's acting like this, she's probably having another moment of hers, So yeah.
Can you tell us the benefits of going to therapy once you found out your mental illness, and the importance of having a support system?
Okay, so yes, I believe in therapy, but in terms of my approach and my healing journey, I've taken a more spiritual approach to my healing. But in terms of therapy, yes. So I'm gonna just tie back to the story when I told you, from a manic episode into a depressive. So now once you are committed, because you are a danger to yourself once you start being in a depressive episode, so you start trying to attempt suicide. So once you are committed, you're booked in, you're gonna be put heavily on medication, depending on your case. And then obviously you are gonna be given medication for your case or your diagnosis. And then you're gonna be started into talk therapy. That's where you're gonna speak to a therapist. For my journey, yes, I have taken that route where after being committed, and then I talk to a therapist, and then I choose if I want to continue that. So when I say my journey or my approach is spiritual, yes, I do go to talk to a therapist when I feel like, because now I've known how to manage my mental health. I do feel like when I'm in a manic, I know I'm gonna go to a depressive, so I go book myself a session with a therapist. So I believe so much in therapy because they are trained to understand what you're going through. You know, like I said in the beginning, that sometimes it's so hard to put a label to how you're feeling or to whatever it's causing what you're feeling. So they are able to articulate and just validate what you're feeling. Because to a normal person, you could say, Tommy, I'm just going through something, and be like, man, just do this. You know, it's almost like an easy fix advice that you could get from a friend. But a therapist helps you unpack whatever feeling that you're feeling. You say, I'm sad or I'm hurt, I went through this, and you say, okay, what led to these events? Like, they help you. And in most cases, actually with therapy, most of the answers, they're coming from you yourself, the person who's going to therapy, not the therapist. They're just helping you to navigate why your feelings or why you are feeling a type of way. So for me, I'm a big advocate for therapy. Yes, I do go for it. I do advise for people to go, especially if you're advised to.
Tell us about the importance of not rushing into a relationship, especially when you know where you stand mentally, right? So the importance of that. And then now, because you're in a relationship, how has it been? How do you communicate your mental illness with your partner? Do you do it before you guys date, or now that you're in it, then you let him know?
For me, I took a conscious decision to not date for like 3 years. And I was doing a lot of self-work. Because I knew that there's a lot of inner child for me to heal. My inner child was wounded, and I knew that if I'm gonna step into a relationship or a partnership, it had to be for the right reason, not because I'm lonely or I feel like, age is not, because you start feeling a little pressure when you're in your late 30s, when you're about to jump to your 30s, that's, hey, where is the person in your life? When are you gonna start having kids? All of that conversation. So I'm not gonna lie, the pressure, societal pressure did get to me to some point, but I had to really be honest with myself. I had to sit with myself. I was like, B, what do you want? I mean, just be honest with what you want, and you also have to be honest with how you want that. So I really had to have an internal dialogue with myself and sit with myself, and then and just ask myself, like, what do I want and how do I want it? And for me, I've always had a picture, just like when it comes to my career, of how I want it to go like. And I wanted to create a picture of how I want my partner to be like. And not just like in terms of like your physical, but just character-wise. I wanted someone who's going to be like this, because it's no use looking for this and then not having substance, So I took a conscious decision to just stay single, because I knew that I had a lot of healing to do, a lot of my past that I had to unpack, because I did not want to come into a partnership or a relationship and still have baggage to thingy, So for me, that was important. So I was honest with myself to say, it's fine if people are going into relationships, just clap for them, be happy for them. When I just sit, do the work, it's gonna work out in the end. So the time before I met my partner, I really was in a good place, because I'd overcome a lot. And I knew, there's a lot of understanding of self. And I've come to understand, like I said before, my mental health. I know how to tell if I'm going manic. Okay, I'm manic. I know what's going to follow after manic. So I understood myself enough to know how to take care of myself. Not even a sense of I can help myself, but I know how to ask for help, So I was ready spiritually. I was ready mentally. And I was like, if I happen, and I had a conversation with God. I was like, if it happens, Just you let me know. But I was like, I'll also know. I'll think I'll know when you do. So I met my partner and we had a conversation. And what's lovely about meeting my partner is that he met me at a night where I was with my family and I was with my friends, and he was in a table where I was so vulnerable. So he basically knew so much about me before we can even have a proper conversation. So that for me was so important, because by the time we started to have a conversation if we're gonna go into a partnership or not, he already knew who I was. He already knew my substance. So jumping in and talking deeply about and being vulnerable about my mental health with him was just like a breeze. He was like, okay, this is what I've picked up and this is what I picked up. And what's so beautiful also about my journey with him is that he's helped me so much in terms of my mental health. He even says till this day, listen, if you're going to therapy, like, talk to me before. It's like he's somewhat bothered even. He's like, why did you talk to me and you talk to your therapist? And he's so sweet. He wants to accompany me sometimes when I go to my therapy sessions. Like, I just feel like that is just so gold. I've never had that in my life. That's the kind of stuff that I see in the movies. So when it's actually happening to me, I'm like, pinch me, God.
So did you say to him, I have a specific mental illness?
Because remember in the round table where we were in my birthday dinner, he heard. But obviously when we started to have a conversation, he asked, he's like, just tell me more so that I can understand. So he was asking, he was really probing. He wanted to know like the specs. So he was like, just tell me more about it, how it looks like, how it feels like, and how can I maybe support you when you're going through, like, do you need space? Do you need me to stay? Like all of those things. So I had to just let him in. Sometimes I'm going to need my space and you need to understand that. And sometimes I'm going to need you here, but also not need you here. And I had to also explain what does that mean, so it's in dynamics, but it's also in learning in each other how to make it work. But yeah, more than anything, I'm really glad that I took the time off, because it set so much clarity into what I have right now. I don't think that if I had not given myself the time to just sit it out and sit with myself and learn to be my own company and now be in a partnership and navigate that space, it's truly beautiful. It's a lot of work, but it is truly beautiful. Mental illness comes with a lot of stigma, and sometimes it's not just with society, but also with self. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, if I come and say this to Manini, yes, she'll say, she'll accept because she's my friend, but what guarantee do I have she'll really understand the depth of what I'm saying or the depth of what I'm trying to explain? Because like I said before, it's, sometimes it's hard to put a label to how I'm feeling or why I did something or how I said it or whatever. Most of the time it doesn't even have meaning, so it's difficult in that sense. So there's a lot also of stigma in terms of coming out. It's not easy to go to your friend and say, friend, actually, I'm like this, because you think, how, why have you been quiet this long? Sometimes it comes out like that. It's like, why did you tell me all of that? Because you first sit with yourself and you are processing your own diagnosis. I'm living with this and I have this and I'm trying to live life and navigate life with it. And now I'm trying to introduce the people that I have in my circle, in my life, into this illness because it's part of me. So support for someone who's living with a mental illness. Usually I say that your job as someone who is living or supporting someone who lives with a mental illness is just to sit there and be awkward and feel awkward. Like, there's no right thing to say, there's no right thing to do, there is no structure of you doing the right thing or wrong thing. You just need to sit there and just ask one simple question: what do you need me to do for you? What can I do to make you feel better? Those are the two magic words. Don't try to come with positive affirmations and positive energy. Say, friend, you're gonna go through this, just stay positive, just pray. Yes, all those things work, but at that present moment, can you acknowledge that I feel sad? Can you acknowledge that I feel pain? Can you acknowledge that I feel anger? And I need to sit with those feelings. I always say that pain deserves the same intensity that happiness occupies in our lives, because we're human beings. We're supposed to have natural human experiences. You're gonna be sad, you're gonna be happy, you're gonna be not, and we are all supposed to go through those emotions. So we don't disregard when you are happy. So don't do the same when someone is happy or going through something. So when you're sad, sit with that sadness until you're not sad anymore. When you're feeling pain, feel that pain, sit with it until you don't feel it anymore. It's about working through that feeling so that you don't feel it anymore. So the minute you dismiss it, either by using other forms of trying to distract yourself, going out, whatever, it's not going to work, because in the morning when you wake up, you're going to still feel it. So if you are someone who is supporting or knows someone that you want to support, someone who's living with a mental illness, just ask them what you can do for them. It's simple. Just ask them what you can do for them and how you can do that, how you can show up for them, what they can do for you at that present moment. But it's not about saying the right things. You can never say the right thing to someone who's in pain, for someone who is just going through a mental illness. And also one of the reasons why I created my platform was exactly that, because I open my DMs for people to vent. People are in a lot of pain. People are suffering. And mental health doesn't have a face. It's people who that look like you and me, and it's people that you pass in the streets, but you don't know their battles. They're not written in their foreheads, but they are going through it. So that's why I was even saying in the beginning that I'm happy there's such an uprising of safe spaces that exist online. You know, there are people who they can reach out to. So number one, yes, support is the first thing. Two, depending on your I won't say depending, you need therapy. Everyone needs therapy. Just like going to your doctor or going for an exercise or whatever, you need to keep check of your mental health. Even if it's just for learning purposes or just to understand or connect with yourself deeper, you need therapy, even if it's just once a year, in whatever intervals, but everyone needs to walk into a door of a therapist. There are coping tools. Because I think even in the beginning of my organization or my movement, for people who cannot afford therapy, there are coping tools that are available. Coping tools like yoga, meditation, those are still not easy also to understand or comprehend. That's a different conversation on its own. But even self-care, and self-care looks and feels different for all of us. Self-care sometimes means not having plans. Self-care sometimes means taking the day off. It means taking a walk. Self-care sometimes look like, canceling plans that you had or not answering phone calls. Self-care is also sleeping, like take rest. We don't listen to our bodies because we're trying to push paper, trying to get paper. But sometimes we're so burnt out, and I'm so guilty of this. There was a point where I was just trying to get more money. And I was not happy, and I thought more money was going to make me happy, but it wasn't. So honoring your body, listening to your body, listening to what your mind wants, what your heart wants, what your soul needs at that present moment, being present in yourself. I will always advocate for people to have internal conversations with themselves. Like once in a while, sit down with yourself. Check if you had a goal list that you'd written down, which this is what I want to do. Keep referencing that checklist or that goal or wish list that you had. Am I still on track? What am I doing right? All of that. And just ask yourself relevant and healing questions. Am I really attracted to the person that I am? Am I the person that I want to be?
Why did you start the organization?
I started Mental Talk 101, which was then at the time Babalwa Mantras, because I did not find a safe space for me to just vent and to talk about my mental health. At the time, it was something that I just been diagnosed with, and it was just, I remember I had a love-hate relationship with Instagram to begin with, because everyone that I was seeing was happy, was just getting along with life. I was like, I'm seeing only one side of life. People are happy, they're putting a filter on their photos, everything's so curated, everything is so like almost picture perfect. And I was like, I struggled with that. I was like, I cannot be the only person out there in the world who's probably feeling crappy, or they feel sad, or they feel miserable, or they're trying to find a label to how they are feeling. So I looked, I tried to find a safe space online. At the time, I couldn't find it. I was like, okay, this bothers me. And even outside of social media, I tried to look for that space at work. I couldn't find it. I tried to find it in the church. I couldn't find it. And it bothered me that no one was having a conversation about this. And I knew, and personally at that time, I also knew people who were suffering from mental health illnesses. And I was like, but why are we not talking about it? How are we going to begin to heal if no one talks about it? So I was like, let me just start this platform. And I just had a conversation with God. I was like, listen, I don't know what I'm doing, but you're just going to guide me. But I feel like I should do something about it. And I started my online platform, and I started to share about my experience. And I took it from there. People were just resonating with my story, and it grew, and here we are today.
I hope that you were able to learn from this episode. I hope that it resonates with you. I hope that from it, you're going to be able to sit down and, as Babalwa mentioned, think about your life. Think about who you are, and don't put so much pressure on yourself. I really hope that if it's not you that needs help, that you know someone that does. I know I've learned so much. I thought there are things that I knew about her, but there's definitely a space that I have to create for me to be able to know more, because she's not the only friend I have that needs my support because of mental illness. So I hope that you're able to take this information and help yourself, if not you, to help someone that you love, to help a friend, a family member, so that we can save ourselves from ruining maybe our friendships and our circles, and just to be a good support system. One thing that I've learned that she said is, you do not have to say anything. Just sit there. Don't give profound affirmations. Don't give big words and Bible verses, no offense, but just sit there and be in the awkward moment. I hate awkward moments, but I'm learning that I have to. So for more details, as she mentioned, she has an organization called Mental Talk 101 on Facebook, on Instagram. And I hope that you will follow, because there you find more information on the free therapy sessions that you can get. Remember, it is important to talk to someone. So I hope that you've learned something, and please go to her pages, Mental Talk 101 on Instagram and Facebook, and find out more details on how you can go about your therapy and just how to deal with your mental illness. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.